I slammed the door of my office, the vibration rattling the framed blueprints on the wall. Another day, another argument with a client who thought they knew better than a professional architect with 15 years of experience. I sank into my chair, rubbing my temples. A soft knock interrupted my brooding. "Rose? Everything all right in there?" I sighed. "Come in, Leonard." The door creaked open, and Leonard's salt and pepper head poked through. "Brought you some coffee. Figured you might need it after that spirited discussion." I couldn't help but smile. Leonard had been my mentor when I first started at the firm, and now, even as colleagues, he still looked out for me. "Thanks, Leonard. You're a lifesaver." He set the mug on my desk, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "Want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "Same old story. Client thinks because they watched a few home renovation shows, they're suddenly experts in structural engineering." Leonard chuckled. "Ah, the joys of our profession. You handled it well, though. I was impressed." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because I feel like I just got run over by a dump truck full of unrealistic expectations." He leaned against my desk, his voice softening. "Rose, you're one of the best architects I've ever worked with. Don't let one difficult client shake your confidence." I felt a warmth spread through my chest at his words. Leonard always knew just what to say. Sometimes I wondered if the moment was broken by my phone buzzing. I glanced at the screen, expecting another work email. Instead, I saw an unfamiliar number. "Everything okay?" Leonard asked, noticing my frown. "Yeah, just a weird text." I showed him the message. "The truth about your parents will shock you. Meet me at Riverside Park, 7 p.m. tonight if you want answers." Leonard's brow furrowed. "That's concerning. Are you going to go?" I bit my lip, conflicted. "I don't know. It's probably just some prank or scam, right?" "Probably," Leonard agreed, but he didn't sound convinced. "Still, maybe you should bring someone with you just in case." I shook my head. "No, I need to handle this myself." The truth was, my relationship with my parents had always been complicated. If there really was some hidden truth, I needed to face it alone. Leonard looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just squeezed my shoulder. "All right, but promise me you'll be careful. And call me if you need anything, okay?" I nodded, grateful for his concern. As he left my office, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change dramatically. The rest of the day crawled by in a haze of meetings and phone calls. By the time 7 p.m. rolled around, my stomach was in knots. I found myself standing at the edge of Riverside Park, scanning the faces of passers-by, wondering which one held the key to my past. Rose Thompson? I spun around to see a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a folder tucked under her arm. "Yes, that's me," I said cautiously. She thrust the folder at me. "Everything you need to know is in here. I'm sorry, but your parents aren't who you think they are." Before I could respond, she turned and disappeared into the evening crowd, leaving me clutching a folder that suddenly felt as heavy as my racing heart. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to read. The first words made my blood run cold. DNA test results. No genetic match found between Rose Thompson and her presumed parents. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Who was I? And more importantly, who were the people I had called Mom and Dad for the past 35 years? The revelation about my parents hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me adrift in a sea of confusion and betrayal. For days, I wandered through life in a daze, barely able to focus on work. Leonard kept shooting me concerned glances, but I couldn't bring myself to share the truth. How could I, when I barely understood it myself? It was in this fragile state that my friend Megan dragged me to a charity event for urban development. "You need to get out, Rose," she insisted. "Meet some new people, maybe even a handsome stranger." I rolled my eyes but allowed her to pull me along. As we entered the crowded ballroom, I felt overwhelmed by the sea of unfamiliar faces. That's when I quite literally bumped into him. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, mortified as I watched my champagne splash onto his crisp white shirt. He laughed, a warm, rich sound that made me look up. "No worries. I was looking for an excuse to ditch this monkey suit anyway." His easy smile and twinkling blue eyes caught me off guard. "I'm Jake," he said, extending his hand. "Urban planner and occasional champagne magnate." Despite myself, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. Rose, architect and accidental drink thrower. We fell into easy conversation, discussing our shared passion for sustainable city design. For the first time in days, I felt the weight on my chest lighten. "So, Rose," Jake said, leaning in conspiratorially, "what do you say we ditch this stuffy party and grab a real drink? I know a great little place around the corner." I hesitated, glancing at Megan, who was giving me an emphatic thumbs up from across the room. You know what? Why not? The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. Jake and I saw each other almost every day, our connection deepening with each shared laugh and passionate debate about urban planning. He was kind, intelligent, and seemed to genuinely care about me. One Sunday afternoon, Jake invited me to a family barbecue. "I want you to meet them," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "They're going to love you." As we pulled up to a charming suburban home, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. My own family was a mess. Parents who weren't really my parents, a sister I barely spoke to. What if Jake's family saw right through me? But the moment we stepped through the door, I was enveloped in warmth. Jake's mother, Linda, pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, Rose, we've heard so much about you. Welcome, sweetheart." Jake's father, Robert, shook my hand with a twinkle in his eye. "So you're the brilliant architect who's stolen our boy's heart, eh?" And then there was Ella, Jake's younger sister. She bounded up to me, full of energy. "Rose, Jake says you're amazing at your job. I'm thinking about studying architecture, too. Can I pick your brain sometime?" As the afternoon wore on, I found myself relaxing, drawn into the easy banter and genuine affection of Jake's family. It was everything I'd always longed for, but never had. Later, as Jake and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset, he turned to me with a serious expression. "Rose, I know we haven't known each other long, but I think you might be the one. I've never felt this way about anyone before." My heart raced. Part of me wanted to throw caution to the wind and dive headfirst into this fairy tale. But the other part, the part still reeling from the revelation about my parents, held back. "Jake, I hesitated, torn between my growing feelings and my fear of being hurt again. "There's something I need to tell you. About my family." He squeezed my hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. You're part of our family now, Rose." As I looked into his earnest eyes, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation. Could I really trust this perfect picture, or was I setting myself up for another heartbreak? The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of happiness. Jake and I grew closer, and I found myself spending more time with his family, especially Ella. One sunny afternoon, we sat in her room, surrounded by college brochures and architecture magazines. "Rose, I can't thank you enough for helping me with this," Ella said, her eyes shining with excitement. "I never thought I'd actually have a shot at getting into a top architecture program." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "You've got real talent, Ella, and determination. That's half the battle right there." She bit her lip, hesitating. "Can I ask you something personal?" I nodded, curious. "Jake mentioned you don't talk to your family much. I hope you don't mind me asking, but why?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't told Jake's family about the DNA test results yet. "It's complicated," I said softly. "I recently found out some unsettling information about my parents. I'm still processing it." Ella's eyes widened. "Oh, Rose, I'm so sorry, but you know you have us now, right? You're like the big sister I never had." Her words touched me deeply, and I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Thank you, Ella. That means more than you know." As I left Ella's room, I nearly collided with Jake in the hallway. His face lit up when he saw me, and before I could say a word, he dropped to one knee. My heart stopped. "Rose," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I know this might seem fast, but when you know, you know. You've brought so much joy and love into my life. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to spin around me. Part of me wanted to scream yes immediately, but the other part, the part still reeling from the revelation about my parents, hesitated. "Jake, I don't know what to say," I stammered. His face fell slightly, but he rallied. "You don't have to answer right now. Just think about it, okay?" I nodded, my mind whirling. The next day at work, I was still in a daze when Leonard knocked on my office door. "Rose, you okay? You seem distracted." I looked up at him, suddenly realizing I needed to talk to someone. "Jake proposed?" I blurted out. Leonard's face went through a series of rapid emotions before settling on a forced smile. "That's wonderful, isn't it?" I sighed. "I don't know, Leonard. It's all happening so fast, and with everything going on with my family." He sat down across from me, his eyes filled with concern. "Rose, you know you can always talk to me, right? About anything." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted outside my office. The door burst open, and Jake strode in, followed by a crowd of our coworkers. "Surprise!" they all shouted. I stared in shock as Jake grinned and held up a banner that read, "Congratulations on your engagement." "I know you haven't officially said yes yet," Jake said, his eyes twinkling. But I figured a little encouragement couldn't hurt. As our colleagues swarmed around us, offering congratulations, I felt overwhelmed. Jake slipped a ring onto my finger, and I stared at it, feeling a mix of elation and panic. I caught Leonard's eye across the room. He looked stricken, and in that moment I realized there was more to his feelings for me than just friendship. Jake's arm around me tightened, and he whispered in my ear, "I can't wait to start our life together, Rose, you, me, and my family. It's going to be perfect." As the impromptu party swirled around me, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. On one side was the promise of the family I'd always dreamed of. On the other, a nagging doubt that wouldn't let go. What had I gotten myself into? And more importantly, how was I going to get out if I needed to? The whirlwind of wedding preparations swept me off my feet. Between dress fittings, venue tours, and endless decisions about flowers and centerpieces, I barely had time to breathe, let alone think about the nagging doubts in the back of my mind. One evening, as Jake and I collapsed onto the couch after another marathon planning session, he dropped a bombshell. "Honey, I've been thinking," he said, his voice casual. "What if we moved in with my parents after the wedding?" I sat up straight, my heart racing. "What? Why would we do that?" Jake shrugged. "It makes sense financially. We could save for a down payment on our own place faster. Plus, Mom and Dad would love having us around." I tried to keep the panic out of my voice. "But Jake, we're starting our life together. Don't you want some privacy?" He took my hand, his eyes earnest. "Rose, my family is everything to me. I thought you understood that. Don't you want to be part of it?" Guilt washed over me. Jake's family had been so welcoming, so loving. How could I deny them? And yet the thought of giving up my independence made me feel physically ill. I need to think about it," I stammered. Jake's face fell. "What's there to think about? Don't you trust me?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leonard. "Hope wedding plans are going well. Miss seeing you around the office. Coffee soon?" I quickly put the phone away, feeling a pang of something. Regret? Longing? I pushed the thought aside. The next day I found myself at Jake's parents' house, ostensibly to discuss wedding details with his mother, Linda. As we sat in the kitchen, surrounded by bridal magazines, she broached the subject. "Jake told us about his idea," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, Rose, we'd be so thrilled to have you here. You're already like a daughter to us." I forced a smile. "It's a big decision, Linda. I'm not sure." She waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. Family takes care of family. You'll see. It'll be wonderful." Just then, Ella burst into the kitchen, her face alight with excitement. "Rose, I got in. The architecture program at State U." I jumped up, genuinely thrilled for her. "Ella, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." As we hugged, I caught Linda's eye. Her smile seemed calculating. "You see, Rose, you've already had such an impact on our Ella. Imagine how much more you could do living here." I felt trapped, cornered by their expectations, my conflicting desires. That night, as I tossed and turned in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control of my own life. The next morning, I arrived at work early, desperate for some peace. To my surprise, Leonard was already there, concern etched on his face. "Rose," he said softly, "what's going on? You've seemed off lately." Something in his gentle tone broke through my defenses. Before I knew it, I was spilling everything. The DNA test, Jake's proposal, the pressure to move in with his family. Leonard listened without judgment, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he took a deep breath. "Rose, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this. You deserve to be happy. Really, truly happy, not just going along with what others want for you." His words hit me like a thunderbolt. I realized I'd been so caught up in trying to please everyone else, I'd lost sight of what I truly wanted. "I need to talk to Jake," I said, standing up abruptly. "I need to be honest with him and with myself." As I headed for the door, Leonard called out, "Rose, whatever happens, I'm here for you." I nodded, my heart pounding. It was time to take control of my own story. I stood outside Jake's parents' house, my heart pounding. After my conversation with Leonard, I knew I had to confront Jake about my doubts. But as I reached for the doorbell, I heard raised voices from inside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept around to the open kitchen window. "Can't believe how perfectly this is working out," Linda's voice drifted out. "Once Rose moves in, we'll have access to her entire salary." I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. Jake's voice responded, sounding uncertain. "Mom, I'm not sure about this. Rose trusts us. It feels wrong to." "Don't be naive, Jake," Robert cut in. "This is our chance to finally get out of debt. Your little architect girlfriend is our ticket to financial freedom." My world tilted on its axis. The family I thought had welcomed me with open arms had been plotting to use me all along. Ella's voice piped up. "But what about Rose's career? She's so talented, and she's been helping me." Linda scoffed. "Oh, please, once she's part of this family, her career will be the least of our concerns. She'll be too busy taking care of us." I stumbled back from the window, bile rising in my throat. How could I have been so blind? The warmth, the acceptance, it had all been a carefully crafted lie. In a daze, I made my way back to my car. As I drove home, my mind raced. What was I going to do? The wedding was in 2 weeks. Invitations had been sent, deposits paid. And Jake? Had he been in on this from the beginning? Back in my apartment, I paced restlessly. I couldn't marry Jake, not now. But how could I call off the wedding without revealing what I'd overheard? Would anyone even believe me? My phone buzzed incessantly, texts from Jake, Linda, Ella. I ignored them all. Instead, I found myself dialing a different number. "Leonard, I need your help." His voice was steady, calming. "I'm here, Rose. What do you need?" "Can you meet me at the courthouse tomorrow? There's something I need to do." The next morning, Leonard and I stood in line at the marriage license office. My hand shook as I filled out the cancellation form. "Are you sure about this, Rose?" Leonard asked gently. I nodded, fighting back tears. "I have to." "You didn't hear them, Leonard. They were planning to use me, to take my money. It was all a lie." As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a new anxiety. What would happen when Jake and his family found out? My phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "Rose, where have you been? We've all been worried sick." I steeled myself. "Jake, we need to talk. Can you meet me at the park?" An hour later, I sat on a bench watching Jake approach. His face lit up when he saw me, and for a moment I almost wavered. But then I remembered the cold calculation in Linda's voice, the way they had discussed using me like I was nothing more than a means to an end. "Jake," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, "there's something I need to tell you." As I spoke, I saw the color drain from his face. By the time I finished, he looked like a stranger. "Rose, I don't know what to say. I swear I didn't know about this." I stood up, my decision solidified. "It doesn't matter, Jake. I can't be part of a family built on lies and manipulation. The wedding is off." As I walked away, leaving Jake stunned on the bench, I felt a mix of grief and relief. The fairy tale was over, but maybe now I could start writing my own story, one where I was the author of my own happiness. I stood in the driveway of Jake's family home, my suitcases at my feet. Despite everything I'd overheard, despite canceling the marriage license in secret, I found myself moving in with them. Jake had been so apologetic, swearing he knew nothing about his family's plans. He begged me to give them a chance, to let him prove his love was real. And like a fool, I agreed. Linda threw open the front door, her smile wide but her eyes calculating. "Rose, darling, welcome home." I forced a smile, reminding myself this was temporary. I just needed time to figure out my next move. Jake carried my bags upstairs to what would be our room. As he set them down, he pulled me close. "I'm so glad you're here, Rose. We're going to be so happy, I promise." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The first few days were a whirlwind of false cheer and thinly veiled expectations. Linda constantly hovered, asking about my work schedule, my salary, my benefits package. Robert made offhand comments about the family's financial struggles, hinting at how much my contribution would help. On the fourth night, as we sat down to dinner, Linda cleared her throat. "Rose, dear, we've been thinking. Since you're part of the family now, it only makes sense for you to contribute to the household expenses." I nearly choked on my water. "Excuse me?" Jake squeezed my hand under the table. Mom, we talked about this. Rose just moved in. We can't. Linda waved him off. Nonsense. Rose understands, don't you, dear? Family helps family. I felt trapped, cornered. I suppose I could contribute something. Robert leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Excellent. We were thinking your entire salary would be a good start. The room spun. My entire salary? But what about my own expenses? My savings? Linda laughed, a brittle sound. Oh, Rose, you don't need to worry about that anymore. We'll take care of everything. I looked at Jake, silently pleading for him to say something. Anything. But he just stared at his plate, avoiding my gaze. Ella, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. This isn't right. You can't just take all of Rose's money. Ella, be quiet, Linda snapped. The adults are talking. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. I fled to the backyard, my mind reeling. How had I let things get this far? I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over Leonard's number. But before I could call, Jake appeared beside me. Rose, I'm so sorry. I didn't know they would ask for your entire salary. We can figure something else out. I turned to him, really looking at him for the first time since I'd moved in. Did you know, Jake, about their plans to use me? He hesitated, and in that moment I knew. The betrayal cut deep. I thought I could protect you, he whispered. I thought once we were married, I could make them see reason. I stepped back, my voice shaking. You lied to me. You're just as bad as they are. Jake reached for me, but I pushed past him, running back into the house. I needed to get out to escape this nightmare I'd willingly walked into. But as I reached the front door, Linda blocked my path. Where do you think you're going? I'm leaving, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Linda's eyes narrowed. I don't think so, dear. You see, we've already made some financial arrangements based on your contribution. You can't just walk away now. Robert appeared behind her, his face grim. You're part of this family now, Rose, for better or worse. As they closed in around me, I realized with horror that I was trapped. Not just financially, but physically. The fairy tale had become a nightmare, and I was the prisoner in the tower. In that moment, I knew I had to find a way out, no matter the cost. But how? My heart raced as I paced the confines of my room. No, my prison. It had been 3 days since Linda and Robert's ultimatum, and I felt the walls closing in. Jake had been suspiciously absent, claiming work emergencies. I knew I had to act, and fast. A soft knock on the door startled me. Rose? It's Ella. Can I come in? I hesitated, then opened the door. Ella's eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant for this to happen. In that moment, I saw my way out. Ella, I need your help. Can you trust me? She nodded, determination replacing the fear in her eyes. Over the next hour, we hatched a plan. Ella would create a distraction, allowing me to access the family's financial records. If I could find proof of their schemes, I could expose them. That night, as the family gathered for dinner, Ella knocked over a vase, shattering it across the floor. As Linda and Robert rushed to clean up, I slipped into Robert's study. My hands shook as I rifled through drawers and files. Finally, I found what I was looking for: bank statements, loan documents, all pointing to a web of financial deceit. They weren't just planning to use my money, they were drowning in debt and saw me as their lifeline. I quickly snapped photos with my phone, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it downstairs. Just as I finished, the door creaked open. Jake stood there, his face a mask of betrayal. Rose, what are you doing? I straightened up, clutching my phone. Finding the truth, Jake. The truth you've been hiding from me. His eyes darted to the scattered papers, realization dawning. Rose, please, let me explain. Explain what? I spat. How you and your family plan to use me, to steal my money, my future? Jake reached for me, but I backed away. I love you, Rose. I thought if we got married, I could fix things, make it right. By lying to me? By trapping me in this house? Anger and hurt coursed through me. That's not love, Jake. That's manipulation. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Linda's shrill voice called out, Jake? Is everything all right? I knew it was now or never. Pushing past Jake, I ran down the stairs, nearly colliding with Linda and Robert at the bottom. What's going on? Robert demanded, his eyes narrowing as he saw my phone clutched in my hand. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I know everything, the debts, the schemes, all of it, and I'm leaving. Linda's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little— No, I cut her off. I'm done being manipulated. I've canceled our marriage registration, and I have proof of your financial fraud. If you try to stop me, I'll go straight to the police. The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, his face ashen. Rose, please. I turned to him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. It's over, Jake. All of it. As I moved towards the door, Ella appeared, my packed suitcase in hand. Linda lunged for her, but Robert held her back, defeat evident in his slumped shoulders. You'll regret this, Linda hissed. You're nothing without us. I paused at the door, looking back at the family that had nearly destroyed me. No, I'm everything without you, and I'm taking my life back. With that, I stepped out into the cool night air, Ella right behind me. As we drove away, the weight of the past few months began to lift. Where will you go? Ella asked softly. I thought of Leonard, of the office, of the life I'd nearly lost. Home, I said. I'm going home. As the house disappeared in the rearview mirror, I felt a mix of relief and trepidation. I had escaped, but at what cost? And what challenges lay ahead as I reclaimed my life and my identity? The office felt both familiar and strange as I walked through the doors for the first time in weeks. Whispers followed me down the hallway, but I held my head high. I'd faced worse than office gossip. Leonard was the first to approach me, concern etched on his face. Rose, are you all right? We've all been so worried. I managed a small smile. I'm getting there. It's been a rough few weeks. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. If you need anything, I'm here. As the days passed, I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the clean lines and precise calculations of architecture. Slowly, the whispers died down, replaced by a newfound respect from my colleagues. They'd seen me weather a storm and come out stronger. One evening, as I was packing up to leave, Leonard appeared at my door. Rose, I'm glad you're back, and I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Something in his voice made me look up. The care and admiration in his eyes took my breath away. How had I never noticed it before? Thank you, Leonard, I said softly, for everything. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I focused on rebuilding my career and my sense of self. Ella called occasionally, updating me on her progress in architecture school and assuring me that Jake's family was facing the consequences of their actions. Through it all, Leonard was a steady presence, offering support without pressure. Our friendship deepened, conversations flowing easily over shared lunches and late-night work sessions. It was on one such evening, as we pored over blueprints for a new project, that Leonard suddenly set down his pencil. Rose, there's something I need to tell you. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? He took a deep breath. I've had feelings for you for a long time. I never said anything because, well, timing never seemed right. But after everything that's happened, I realized life's too short to stay silent. I stared at him, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. Fear, excitement, hope. Leonard, he held up a hand. You don't have to say anything now. I know you've been through a lot. I just wanted you to know. In that moment, looking into his kind eyes, I saw a future I'd never dared to imagine before. A partnership based on mutual respect and genuine care. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I expected, I do have something to say. Yes. His eyebrows shot up. Yes? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Yes, I have feelings for you too. And yes, I'd like to see where this goes. The smile that spread across his face was like the sun breaking through clouds. We took things slow, both of us aware of the weight of our shared history and my recent experiences. But with each passing day, I felt more certain that this was right. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn evening, Leonard and I stood on the rooftop garden of our latest project. The city lights twinkled below us, a testament to the beauty we'd created together. Leonard turned to me, his eyes shining. Rose, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You're not just my partner in work, but in every aspect of life. I can't imagine a future without you by my side. My breath caught as he dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Rose Thompson, will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision as I looked at the man before me. A man who had stood by me through my darkest times, who valued me for who I was, not what I could give him. Yes, I whispered, then louder. Yes. As Leonard slipped the ring on my finger and pulled me into an embrace, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to a love built on trust, respect, and genuine partnership. I had lost a false fairy tale, but gained something far more precious, a real, enduring love story of my own.